Thank, thank you so much, Renisha, for that warm welcome. I appreciate it. And I have to start out by saying, greetings, Toastmasters. It's such a privilege to be here with my peers, with my friends, with my fellow future aspiring public speakers and leaders. Thank you all so much for attending my session. I'm excited to get started talking about, as Renisha said, all things evaluation. Now, before I hop into my slides, I know that one question on the registration form today was, what do you hope to get out of this session? What I would love for folks to do is pop in the chat for me some of the things that you mentioned that you'd love to get out of this session. I'd love if you go ahead and put those in the chat. And Renisha, will you help me call those out as folks put them in the chat?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And while folks are putting things in the chat, Jerome, didn't mean to cut you off, but I forgot a little tidbit that Rod Alexander reminded us about. You won the 2019 evaluation speech contest. So you're really pulling from the richness of your toolbox, and we want people to lean in. There you go. Back to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that note. So actually, I've got the chat pulled up since I don't have my slides up yet. I can go ahead and see. Some folks are mentioning a theme is, I want to be a better speech evaluator. I want to give more effective feedback and better quality feedback. You're in the right place tonight. Now, as I begin, I would like to go ahead and mention that I'm a fairly informal type of presenter. So if you have ideas, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm going to ask Renisha to help me keep an eye on the chat while I'm presenting, and I'd love to go ahead and pause as it makes sense to address whatever questions and comments come up. There will also be moments that I'll invite folks to come off of mute. I may even, in true Toastmasters form, take a few volunteers to help co-facilitate with me or help me participate by participating in some interactions. So be on the lookout. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into the PowerPoint that I've prepared today. Is everybody able to see my title slide, Mastering the Art of Award-Winning Evaluation?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, I've titled this presentation, Mastering the Art of Award-Winning Evaluation, because we know that we're in contest season coming upon us. And we are having evaluation contests for the first time in a while. That being said, I would like to not only focus on how we give feedback and evaluations in our clubs, as well as how we give feedback and evaluation in life, but also throughout the presentation, I want to talk about what award-winning evaluations look like, specifically to the context of Toastmasters speech evaluation contests. There are three things that I hope that we accomplish today. First, I want to make sure that everyone leaving here can really speak to the value of effective feedback for public speakers and just in life. I would also like to make sure that we can all identify the elements of great evaluations. I'm going to give you a few of Jerome's views. Now, by no means is this the exhaustive only way that you can approach evaluation, but these are going to be the ways that I think about evaluation based on what I've learned in my career, as well as what I've learned throughout my Toastmasters journey. Finally, we're going to have some practice time where we get the opportunity to demonstrate what we've learned as we unlock our listening potential and practice providing effective feedback. I want to hear from you. Why does feedback matter? We don't have to pop it in the chat this time. It's a small group so far. I'd love for someone to come off mute. Who will unmute themselves and answer the question, why does feedback matter?
I'll go.
Who is I'll go? I can't see cameras right now.
It's Pat Mitchell.
Hi, Pat. Why is feedback important?
Well, it signals to the speaker or the person that you're having a conversation with that you actually heard what they said. So it helps the person to understand that they're being heard.
I love that.
Secondly, I feel that it allows you to be fully present and you're able to use your app and listening to exactly what the person said and showing a response that be empathetic, or showing a response that could be a little challenging.
Thank you very much. Have you been peeking at my notes? You've definitely touched on some of the things that I'm going to share today.
But in Toastmasters, I feel that everything on that second sheet is important. And I feel that one of the main reasons why in Toastmasters is so valuable is because we learned this skill called effective evaluations.
Thank you very much, Pat.
That's
I
it.
appreciate that. I see Pastor Jeff's hand. This will be the last volunteer that I take for this question. Pastor Jeff, why is feedback important?
Feedback is the third element of effective communication. Without feedback, there's not effective communication. And that's what we do as Toastmasters. I yield the mic.
I love that. Thank you so much, both Pat and Pastor Jeff, for your contributions. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was said. I'd also like to point our attention to why we are here as Toastmasters at all. Now, we began at the beginning of this session with the district mission, but I want to remind us the role that feedback plays in the club mission. Remember what we do in Toastmasters? We provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. There are 3 words in this that I love. You can probably guess which 3 words they are. I did give you a hint. The club mission describes learning, it describes developing, and it describes growth. Well, feedback is a very critical piece of that learning, of that development, and of that growth. Because I'll give you a heads up, folks. If you're practicing a thing poorly, all you're doing is getting better at doing it poorly. Feedback is what helps inch us towards that perfection that we're all striving to. Clearly, we never reach it, but feedback helps us get there. Feedback, effective feedback, is that catalyst, that essential catalyst for both personal and professional growth. Feedback is the seed. Feedback is the water and the sunshine that helps the seed grow. Feedback also serves as a mirror. It helps reflect back to us our strengths, which is supremely important to know, what am I doing well? What's going right for me? It also helps mirror those areas of improvement. And nobody's in Toastmasters just to become really good at Toastmasters. We're here to improve. So feedback is that mirror that helps focus us on what are we doing well and what can we improve. I had the opportunity to share a session about effective evaluation at the district conference. By a show of hands, I would love to see, is there anybody in tonight's audience that attended my session at the district conference in the spring? I see 1, 2, 3, 4 hands, 4 or 5 hands. Great. So there will be a few things that I'm going to recap from the district conference, because I know those that just raised their hands were in attendance. For the rest of the audience, I want to kind of give you some of the baseline that we covered in the district conference. I introduced feedback from a model that I called ARMS. One of the critical things about giving an effective evaluation, part of the anatomy of that award-winning evaluation, is having strong arms. Now, yes, I do go to the gym, but these are not the strong arms that I'm talking about. The strong arms on the screen that you see are our analysis, our recommendations, our manner, and our summary. As we learn about dissecting how do we create really strong and effective evaluations, this is going to be the model that I use. Is it the only model? Not at all. It's definitely not. But this is my approach to evaluation, so that I cover all the bases for what I need to do as an evaluator and what I need to provide to the person I'm giving feedback on. But I don't just want to recap what we learned before. We can consider what we learned in the district conference, the 101. This is our 102 level. So in addition to our strong arms, I want to add a 1-2 punch. Now, it's important to remember that in Toastmasters, an evaluation is 2 to 3 minutes. That's really not a lot of time. So while we will talk about a lot of different areas that you'll have opportunity to provide feedback on to a person that you're evaluating, because of the time constraint and the desire for us to learn how to communicate effectively and succinctly, I like a 1-2 punch when I'm talking about what the analysis and particularly the recommendations that I provide during an evaluation. Balance is very, very essential. It's important that as evaluators, we're providing both praise as well as constructive suggestions so that we're giving a comprehensive and a motivating experience. So the 1-2 punch is that I suggest, as we're providing that evaluation, make sure that we have one really strong highlight. No matter how early or advanced someone is in their Toastmasters career or in their public speaking career, we all do something well. Even if the speech is just a struggle, there's something that was great. The volume was great. The energy was great. Something was great. And it's very important that we give feedback that highlights what a person should continue to do. I had an old manager that used to say, I don't develop my weaknesses, I develop my strengths. Well, a person will know what they're strong in as we help identify as their listener. Here are the areas that were very effective as you presented to me. So make sure to focus in on at least one big highlight. And then I suggest finding 2 opportunities for improvement. Now, opportunities for improvement can range, as we'll talk about what the different things as we'll talk about the different things that you as a listener can analyze. It'll be important to discuss what are going to be some of the great areas that I can provide suggestions on improvement, and how do I provide those suggestions. So this 1-2 punch really ties into your analysis and your recommendations. And of course, there's going to be the manner and the summary. So one of the things that comes up so often as I talk to newer Toastmasters, or even those of us who have been around for a while, is that folks don't always feel that they know what they can provide feedback on. This definitely can come up whenever we're maybe evaluating a person who might be more experienced or might be a better public speaker than we feel like we are. We say, what can I provide feedback on? Well, I have good news. Anybody that's seen the handout, there are lots of things that I believe we can provide feedback on. Here are just some of the areas that we can provide feedback. Now, I've grouped these in the way that we'll discuss them into how we can analyze on the top row, the speech itself. So that's going to be the content. That's the speech's structure. That's the organization, things like that. The second row focuses on the speaker themselves, their appearance, how they show up. And the third row focuses on the technical side. That's actually analyzing the speaking. So let's dive into what we can analyze. And here's where I want to hear a bit from you. Analyzing a speech, that content piece. Some of the things we can analyze are the structure of a speech, organization of a speech, things like supporting materials, ideas, and logic. Now, I know that we all kind of know what these words are. Obviously, they're pretty fundamental and foundational things to our Toastmasters experience. But when we're thinking about a person's speech itself, it is important not just to say, hey, I really liked your flow. Make sure you're giving some of those actionable suggestions. I noticed that you structured your speech this way. You had a very clear beginning, a clear middle, and a clear end with a summary. This was effective because It let me as a listener follow along to the key points and know exactly where you are going and what I should take away. Notice what I did there. I didn't just say good structure. I made sure to, in my suggestion of, or excuse me, in my noting of what was strong, I made sure to give that example of here's why it was strong. Focus on actionable analysis and feedback and recommendations when you're looking at all of these areas. But these are very straightforward. I think as I hear people in club experiences, I hear very good feedback in general on the speech itself. Let's jump into how we can analyze the speaker. As we analyze a speaker, here's where some of the obvious and sometimes less obvious areas come up. We can analyze the speaker's appearance and body language. Those are fairly straightforward. I'd love to give an example of really great appearance that I saw. In one of the speech contests the year before last, I distinctly remember someone was presenting about their travel experiences, and they had on a vest and a backpack. Very subtle, but as soon as they stepped forward, you were very clear from their appearance what the speech was going to be about. And though it was a subtle way of showing up, it definitely upped the level of interest that I, as an audience member, had in hearing about this person's journey. You look like a journey. Let's go. I'm ready to go on it. So appearance, body language, how we use a space. There's opportunity there. Definitely the use of voice. This last piece, I'd like to turn over to the audience. I'd like to hear from you. This last piece of manner. This is a word that comes up in Toastmasters sometimes. What is manner and how do we give feedback on manner? Who will come off mute and let us know what is manner? What is a speaker's manner? I was a classroom teacher, so I have great wait time. I'll wait. Even if you don't know, I'd love if you take a stab. What do you believe manner is?
I'll give it a shot.
Thank you, Patricia. Let's go.
I think if someone's talking about a happy experience, maybe their face is showing it, or if they're talking about death, maybe they're showing that on their face.
I love that. I love where you're going with that. You're definitely getting us close. I'll give you a definition here. Manner is the indirect revelation of the speaker's true self as they are delivering the speech. So manner is really how you do you and how it shows up as you're presenting to us. In Toastmasters, we learn things like, well, speakers should speak with enthusiasm. They should speak with assurance and confidence. It's difficult to actually pinpoint exactly what someone's manner should be because truly it comes from them. So as a listener, the way that manner shows up for us is, does the person feel assured in what they're saying? Do they communicate with a sense of confidence? Now, you probably notice a manner with me. My manner in general tends to be a bit more conversational. My manner tends to be a bit more relaxed. I like to make sure that I'm giving very segmented ways of communicating so that you have a chance to digest one point at a time. Though that's my manner. It's not just the vocal variety. It's not just eye contact. It's not just pacing, but manner is how the speaker feels to the audience, and particularly how they show up, bringing their personality and their essence to the speech. Manner is one of those very ambiguous things, and I don't think all Toastmasters know how to define it, but that definition that I just gave you actually is from Toastmasters. Manner is the indirect revelation of the speaker's real self as their speech is delivered. So how true and honest and authentic and assured and confident the speaker feels to us as a listener. Now, Because we're in a virtual environment, I'd also like to dig in a bit on this use of space. How do we give feedback on the use of space? I guess the real question is, how can a person vary their use of their space if we're sitting here on a Zoom box? What thoughts do you have in the audience? I'm not the only person who's ever evaluated. You all have the answers too. What ways can we use our space? Who will volunteer and make suggestions on how we can use our space effectively during speeches? Bernie, I see you off mute. Share with us.
I see you. I would just say mapping it out before you begin so you know what your visibility is, and then be able to use that space as far as hand gestures, or if you're standing, kind of move towards and away from the camera, etc.
I love that. I love that. So this is a free speaking tip. I know this is focused on evaluation, but part of evaluation is, well, how do we do all of the things? Many times I observe when people are speaking, I observe very close positioning to the camera. But the opportunity to back up really does a lot. One of the things that I can do, even though we're on Zoom, I can still model some of the things that we learn in Toastmasters. For instance, part of my speech, I can look over here at this side of the audience. And then part of my speech, I can look at this side. And part of my speech, I can look in the middle. Granted, I'm going to tell you a secret. Yes, you're all in the middle of my screen on boxes, but the feeling feels like I'm addressing different parts of the audience. Number one, from having backed up and being intentional about where I'm looking. As you also mentioned, Bernie, you're absolutely right that you can use your distance from the camera. If I'm making a very specific point or I want to draw the audience's attention in, then I can lean in. If I want to sort of get bigger and increase the energy of my speech, I can back out just a bit. You all can still hear me just fine, but you get more body, so I can use gesturing. And that's all included in how I'm using my space here. So I bring that up as we're talking about evaluation, because sometimes it's hard to know what to look at for some of these areas. And that's how I suggest that we can consider using our space even in our virtual environment, which is quite a bit different than how we use space in a real face-to-face environment. So these are the things we can analyze about the speaker. We already talked before about the speech itself. Finally, we can make sure that we analyze the speaking. Now, Toastmasters are great at this. We have club level roles that really help model this analysis for us. There's the grammarian role, right? There's the odd counters. These are all things that help us throughout the course of our meetings know how to analyze. And so as evaluators, we can also provide specific pieces of feedback for a person's speech in these areas as well. Speeches, of course, need that clarity. So all of the technical sides like pronunciation, grammar, and choice of word are very important to communicating with clarity. Those are the things that we can analyze. Now, the next point of my R in ARMS is recommendations. I'm going to fly through a few things that I'd like to make sure that we are considering as we are giving recommendations on our 1-2 punch, on the one thing that we noticed was super strong, and on the two things we might recommend improvement on. The first thing I'd like you to consider with recommendations, in Toastmasters, evaluation is a performance. What do I mean by this? A couple of things. First, I notice at the club level, I typically observe people speaking directly to the evaluator. Well, everybody in the meeting is there to learn. So instead of just dialing into, Brenda, I really liked your body language. It was good. It's a performance. So consider, instead of Brenda, I liked your body language, consider Toastmasters. One of the most impressive parts of Brenda's speech I observed was her body language. Notice the way her posture, her positioning, even her gestures brought that speech to life. So I'm performing in that case. I'm bringing the entire audience in to my evaluation, which is part of the performance, because I'm also giving a speech with my evaluation. And I'm not only just helping Brenda consider what I saw, but I'm helping the entire audience consider, how do we improve our public speaking using this speech as an example. I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to talk about some of the differences between evaluations at the club level and evaluations during an evaluation contest. Well, during an evaluation contest, your performance definitely matters. So consider everything that you know about public speaking as you are giving your performance. Consider your own vocal variety. Consider your own eye contact, your own gestures, your own body language, all of those elements, and bring them all to your performance where they make sense and in ways that will make them that will make your evaluation most effective. Next thing I want you to keep in mind with your recommendations, go deeper. Now, when I say go deeper, what I mean is we're all Toastmasters, even folks who are new are going to catch a lot of the obvious things. Instead of maybe noticing, oh, well, Jacob had a really good speech opening. Instead of just saying, Jacob had a good speech opening, let's go deeper. Ensure that you're not just giving a check mark or a plus sign to the thing that was positive. Explain why the thing was positive. So instead of, Jacob, you had a good speech opening, your going deeper could look like, Toastmasters, notice how Jacob's opening to his speech perfectly set the stage for the rest of his presentation. A well-crafted introduction can draw us as an audience exactly into where we need them to be, like perfectly placed bowling pins, so that the main point of the speech is a perfect strike. In addition to just pointing out the thing that was good, we're going deeper. We're describing why it was good and what was the effect of it being good. That's one example of how we can go deeper when giving recommendations. Next point I have. Thank you for the heart, Pastor Jeff. Next point I have. Give examples. This is really in line with that going deeper. When we're particularly giving suggestions for how a person can improve, what really shows that you're a master evaluator is that you can give them examples of what an improvement could look like. So in this case, instead of just saying, Tanisha's got great pacing, she speeds up and she slows down, that's effective. Instead of just saying that, let's add some examples. We could say, notice the effect that Tanisha's pacing had on our experience as an audience. As she became angry with that rude customer, she slowed her speech down. So we hung on every word. Give the example. You can then go deeper and just explain that when we slow our speech as a speaker, we are drawing the listeners in. If this is an area to improve, instead of just saying, oh, Rod, I would love to hear more vocal variety, we could say, Rod, you described a very frustrating point in your story. I would love to hear that frustration in your voice. Give us the frustration that really depicts the moment that customer made you frustrated. Give those examples, model them, demonstrate them. Because modeling, number one, is the most effective way to promote somebody's behavior change. And number two, again, our evaluation is a performance. So that modeling and those evaluations and those examples, help give us that credibility as an evaluator, that this person is giving master tips that are actionable and show me exactly where and how I can improve. Finally, I want to give one more tip about recommendations. And this actually came up from the district conference. One of the people in the audience back then said that they didn't know how to give critical feedback or constructive feedback sometimes in ways that wasn't offensive. Well, for that, I want to share a strategy that is called calling in versus calling out. An example of calling out could be, I'm going to pick on Deborah in our audience. Deborah, your accent makes you difficult to understand, and we couldn't get every word that you were saying. That's a call out. Why is it a call out? Because that's language that describes we're over here and you, Deborah, you're over there. Language that separates the person and makes them feel cast out or describes them as othered or cast away. That's a call out. Now, instead, I like you to consider language that calls in. Calling in language includes phrasing in such a way that, number one, invites the person into a shared goal. So for instance, instead of that, Deborah, your accent is so hard, I can't understand you. Instead, it's, Deborah, we love the way you spoke with passion. Your excitement and energy were very evident. As a result, we sometimes could not hear every word that you were saying with your accent. I'd like to offer you a suggestion that if you slow your pace down and maybe even consider replacing words in your speech that might be difficult to say with more simple words, I believe that will ensure a greater level of clarity. That's a call in. I haven't used language that said, Deborah, you're over there doing this bad thing. I've instead commented on, Deborah, this is a thing I observed, and I'd love to encourage you to do this thing that will make both of our experiences better. You want to communicate clearly, and I want to hear what you've got to say. These are some suggestions that I have. I'd like to take a pause and hear, what questions do you have? What thoughts do you have about anything I've shared thus far about the analysis and the recommendations?
I have a quick thought for you, Jerome.
Yes, I'd love
Some
to
of our
hear.
fellow toasties are pondering. There was an amazing additional detail placed in the chat, wanting to lean into your piece of advice of going deeper. And they mentioned this could be the perfect speech. So how do I find that one thing to help someone improve or suggest? Maybe they are an award-winning person, and it's just hard to nail that one thing to go deeper or call out an example. So audience would like to lean you in that direction if possible.
I love that. Thank you for that question. That is a challenge, and it's a great challenge, right? Let's go back to some of the many things that we can provide feedback on. Here we are. Here are just a sample of some of the many things we can provide feedback on. Well, I can provide feedback on a lot of things. So even when a speech was quote unquote perfect, there's still opportunity. Now, you may not see right away opportunity for how this person could improve maybe this speech, but consider in general other things. For instance, well, and I know that sounded vague, but what I mean by that is, let's say a person had really great vocal variety. They had really great body language for the type of speech that they were giving. You can make sure that you're using their positive example as a learning opportunity. You can say, Kenneth, I noticed really strong use of your space as well as very strong body language. In your speech, the amount of gesturing that you did was very effective when you used your hands to describe the scene at the airport with the baggage handler. It was a very effective use of gesturing. Be careful with gesturing. There will be times that you're giving a speech that needs to be a bit more focused, and excessive use of gestures can sometimes distract us as an audience. While it was very effective in this case, I would like you in future speeches to be very cognizant of being intentional and only gesturing when it's going to be effective. That was one example where a person did great. And not only did I make sure to call out, you did a great thing, there will be times that in the context of that speech, the thing that they did was effective, that we should really keep in mind and learn from as an audience, and even the speaker themselves, that speaking is not just a checkbox of do this every time for every speech and it will be effective. So you're still able to give that insight and have that teaching moment. Did that speak to the question and sufficiently answer? I can't see in the chat who asked, but was that a sufficient response? Would you like me to describe anything else?
Yeah, and they came in a variety of ways from a couple of people. Our good old friend, Ken Everett, I met a few years ago, and also Anita, they both alluded to that. So you covered the bases. That was really good, Jerome. And by all means, fellow Toasties, if you like to chime in there, you are so more than welcome.
Absolutely. Well, I see one chat popped up. I've got the chat pulled up. So Bernie, I see, has asked about accents. I mentioned discussing an accent. In transparency, we've read or we've heard that it's not acceptable to ask someone where they're from or refer to an accent because you're insinuating the individual does not belong. Thank you for mentioning that. There's one thing that we have to be careful to not do. Now, we do not critically or negatively judge a person because of their accent. Specifically, it's not the accent that would ever be a problem. I grew up in the Caribbean. I worked very hard as a kid to lose my accent, but had I not, I could have come to you and I could have been talking in a Trinidadian accent like this. The focus is clarity, right? The only reason that I brought up the accent was the example that it's possible that a person has an accent to the extent that their clarity gets challenged. So it's not the accent that I'm, quote, calling out, and I'm not calling it in either, but I am describing that clarity is critical. And as an audience member, I would recommend these are things that you can do so that I can understand you. Things like slowing their speech, things like word choice do help make sure that I am getting the clear communication. By all means, accents are beautiful. Keep your accent. Do not take linguistics training to lose your accent. My suggestions instead are what will improve the clarity there. Thank you for asking that question. All right, so I would like to model a bit, and then I would like to send you off to do an exercise. So I would like a volunteer to do a quick table topic for me, and then I would love to go through modeling what I would analyze and how I would phrase some of the recommendation here. Who will volunteer to do a table topic for us? This is Toastmasters. You know, if you don't volunteer, you get voluntold. I mean, vol-inspired. Bernie, thank you for your hand. Bernie, I'd love to give you a table topic question. Thank you so much. Your table topic question, 1 to 2 minutes max. Bernie, I would love for you to tell us about an experience that you had traveling and what it meant to you.
Good question. I will go ahead and come off camera for this one. I love to travel, period. You put me on an airplane or give me gas money and I'm the happiest person in the world. Absolutely. Most recently, many of my travels have been due to discovering family, biological family. And I've mentioned this before. I was adopted. I did the Ancestry DNA, and I have discovered cousins from Alaska to New York, from Sweden to Cameroon. Yes, I did say Cameroon. I have a cousin in Cameroon who is as black as midnight, and I love it. One of my trips, I went to Alaska, and I was participating in a family reunion that they hold every year. I was able to meet hundreds of cousins. I've been told that half of Palmer, Alaska is either related to me by marriage or by blood. So I have many, many cousins in Palmer, Alaska. Being able to experience the connection, the biological connection, finding people that I look like has been amazing. And being able to tour Alaska, the beautiful country, was just a bonus, was icing on the cake. I hope to be able to go back again, but in the process, I'm also discovering cousins in other areas of the country as well. So traveling, yes, it is a number one in my book. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, I want to model what's going on in my mind as I am putting myself in the persona of an evaluator. I am Ernest the evaluator. I want to model how I am listening to Bernie's speech. One of the things that jumped out to me was the word selection. Bernie, so the first thing that I would be thinking about was Bernie's using language that gets me excited. It's also some of the way that your vocal variety, specifically, the way you're using your voice, on words like travel was amazing. You're using words that feel good to hear, but you're also emphasizing them in a way that was very effective and gives us that emotion, conveys that emotion to us. So that was the first thing that stood out to me as a real strength as I was listening to you describe your speech. Because my reaction was, well, this is exciting hearing about travel and meeting family. My reaction was excitement, but I asked myself, what is it that is exciting me? And as I analyzed, it was your choices of words and how you were saying them that was the thing that was giving me the experience that I was having. So as I start thinking about how I would deliver your evaluation, I know the one positive I would really stress would be your word selection and the way that you delivered those words. I think about, well, what could be improved? The first things that I go to, now, obviously it was a table topic, it wasn't prepared, but the first thing that I go to is what you shared had a level of excitement. And as such, we would love to see and hear your body excitement and your voice change, giving us kind of highs and lows. That just increases not only the interest of the audience, but also makes us feel how you want us to feel as you're taking us on a journey. So those would be kind of what was great that I would analyze and what I would provide recommendations on. And then, because as I said, evaluation is a performance, I would think about, well, how will I deliver this information? I would start out with, audience, were you as excited as I was to hear Bernie's story? The first thing that was so strong about the way Bernie delivered that was in her word selection, as well as the emotion that she used as she was conveying those words. Bernie said travel was amazing. And the way that she drew that sound out drew me into the story even more. Then she had an incredibly exciting topic, which is learning about new family members. Who would want that? So the actual content was really exciting and engaging. Thank you for that, Bernie. I would then go on into, there are opportunities for improvement that I know we would all like to see in our own speech improvement. Bernie, you have the opportunity to use body language in a very effective way. Toastmasters, if Bernie said that it was amazing, but showed us the excitement in her physicality, that really will help us as an audience feel what she's conveying. Also, if we had some vocal variety, like a somber moment, I met cousins. I have a cousin in Cameroon I met who's as black as night, and I love it. By giving more performance value, we're all brought in a bit more. So that's in real time, how I would do that analysis, how I would consider the way that I want to structure my recommendations, and how I would deliver them as a performance. Thank you for that, Bernie. Thank you for stepping up. Now, my modeling has happened. It's now time to practice. So I'm going to I'm going to ask my tech master to break you out into small groups in breakout rooms so that you can take your time to analyze an award-winning speech. Now, the speech that you'll be analyzing is a 2-minute TED Talk. This is indeed a professional speaker. It does fit the question that was asked earlier. What if they do great? In my opinion, I think they did great. I would love to hear the results from your group. Now, can I get a time check? It is 7:21. I would like us to take 20 minutes in groups. Now, in the course of that 20 minutes, I want you to identify the elements of the speech that are effective, identify some ineffective elements or opportunities to improve. So that's the analysis piece. I would like you to discuss how would you structure those recommendations on what was strong as well as what has opportunity to improve. I would like you to discuss performance, ways that you would perform. So how would you go deeper with that? How would you make sure that you're giving examples of what was good or what maybe to replace with? How would you call in and make sure that you're not calling out? So discuss how you would present those recommendations. And then I would like for each group to provide me with a volunteer that would share the evaluation that they rehearsed in the group in 2 to 3 minutes, preferably 2 minutes so we have time for multiple people to do it. Right. So I know that I have the activity described, this whole activity described in the chat. Can I ask my tech master to post one more time the link to the handout, which does contain the instructions? In the instructions, you will see a link to the YouTube. Now, my recommendation is that as you get in your groups, one person can share and you can watch the YouTube video together. If any of you are having technical challenges, then each of you could just watch it on muting your microphones and watch it yourselves and then unmute once you're finished. What questions can I answer about the group activity before I send you into your breakout rooms? All right. That being said, thank you, Tech Master. Will you open the breakout rooms? Everybody, make sure that you click the link for the activity before you join your breakout room.
And they're off to the races.
Thank you so much. Hi, friends. Are we all back from the rooms? Beautiful, beautiful. First of all, just reactions in the chat. What was that? How was that experience? Reactions in the chat. I see smiles, so that's a good thing. Some greats coming in. Difficult, yes. By design, yes. Interesting, I'll take interesting. Educational, wonderful. I would love to get some share outs from the different groups. So each of your groups was to assign a volunteer that was going to come and share the evaluation. I would love to, who's the first volunteer? I won't call on you yet. Who goes first?
I'll go first to get it over with.
Get it over with, Pat.
And it's interesting because I gave an evaluation. I don't recall much of what I said. I was in the moment, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
The subject matter, first of all, intrigued me tremendously. I had not been in a previous conversation where someone elaborated about how feelings are normal, although they might be negative. I enjoyed her subject matter. Her structure was great. She had great flow and transitions. I felt that in each transition, We watched her body language tie into that transition. I felt her manner was authentic, and I felt that her punchline about only dead people don't feel these emotions. It was very effective. It caught your attention, and you certainly leaned into that analogy for real. I felt her grammar was great. And I felt that she really enjoyed that revelation and sharing that with the audience. Opportunity. I felt that analogy of a dead person was a bit strong overall. It was effective, but it sort of caught you, and it's like it didn't give you a parameter. It was like this or that, and that's it. No gray area. That to me was an opportunity where I felt she could perhaps use something a bit more gentler. But then again, I do give her credit because it was effective overall. I felt she did a great speech. She commanded the stage, gestures, tone, use of space, done quite well. Even her clothing was done well also. I think she did an excellent presentation. Thank you. And I think all of us somewhat agreed in this way.
Thank you so much for that, Pat. Before I respond, I'd like to hear the next volunteer. We're going to take 2 volunteers. I see your hand, Kenneth. I'd love to hear your evaluation of that presentation, your groups.
Thank you. This was an opportunity to listen to someone who was pretty experienced in delivering a message to an audience. I think too that she had a specific message, and she wanted to bring us from point A all the way to point B, C, D in a short period of time. And I think she got her message across, but I also think that it was delivered to a specific type of audience. May have been clinicians, it may be people in AA that were depressed or who were struggling with emotions in some kind of way. And I think the message was, as she mentioned several times, don't run away from your emotions. This is time to embrace. And I give her so much credit for that, because I think she brought that message home. I think also, as her appearance, absolutely right. This was for people who are struggling. It's a dark area. And what did she have on? She had on dark clothing. She started with her hands down at her side, but then slowly started to gesture. And then the slow pacing from one side of the stage and slowly moving around gave the added to the message that she was trying to deliver, which was, this is going to be something that's going to be pretty hard at times to absorb. But then she wanted to grab our attention, and she did it with that little spark of humor, which is, these are the goals of dead people. And I think that brought us in. My suggestion would be, if they weren't clinicians, then please consider your audience. The words were really high level. And for people who are not on that high level, it may be difficult for them to understand. So maybe more examples would be necessary to use for them to understand, and maybe a little bit more of stronger gestures to pull them in and to keep their attention alive. But she's a master at what she does. And I think that she, for sure, appealed to a number of people and got us to understand that this is something you don't run away from, something you have to embrace. Thank you
so much. Thank you for that. Before I go, thank you. Before I go on to one more group to volunteer, I do want to dial into some things. I love to analyze excellence and I love to critique opportunity. So Kenneth, there's some excellence that I want to analyze that you just shared. The question was asked in the chat before we went into breakout. What do you do when a person is obviously a very strong speaker, clearly a professional, and delivers a high quality speech? I appreciate that you kind of had that example. I chose a TED Talk for a reason. We already know that there's a certain caliber when a person is delivering a TED Talk. And as you pointed out, there were many things as you and I can't find who went first. I'm looking on my, I can't see.
Patricia.
Thank you. I couldn't, there you are, Patricia. I couldn't see your camera. As you and Patricia both pointed out, there was many things. There were many, many things that were strong that could be commented on. Kenneth, what you did was the example that I was attempting to illustrate before we went into breakout, that for this audience that we presume, for this topic and the reason she's giving this speech that we presume, a lot of what she did was really effective. If we're talking about what we do to find value in heavy emotions, wearing all black and dark heavy colors is a part of very effective appearance for the audience. Had she been presenting to a different audience, we would definitely encourage some balance, maybe some changes in some of the examples. As you mentioned, the language, her word choice was very effective to one audience. If she was speaking to the layperson, I believe you're not supposed to really choose a lot of words beyond a 5th grade reading level if you're seeking a general audience. Those are things that you absolutely commented on, things that you could provide that analysis and the recommendations for other types of speaking or delivering this content in other places, such that you're giving opportunities to improve that don't diminish having done a really, really great job in this setting. I appreciate the examples that you brought up of what you would analyze and how you would make recommendations. Thank you. All right. I would love one more group to volunteer. I know we had a few more groups, but I would love one more group to volunteer. Who will be the next group?
Volunteer.
Thank you, Stephanie.
From my group. We were all lay people. So we were jolted when we heard dead people's goals, and it was for different reasons. So that word selection, dead people, could have been different. And again, because of the audience, addressing lay people, it made some people uncomfortable for various reasons, depending on where they are in their own personal journey. And so some suggestions would have been maybe rewording that a little bit to be a little gentler and not as harsh. And then her expression, not sure that her expression really matched what she was saying. At some point, it felt like she was trying to be funny and trying to get a giggle from the audience. So she was really being serious the whole time, or she was being a comic, trying to, you know, get us to laugh, but yeah, unsure about that. And then her choice of dark clothing also was a bit off-putting. It was already a dark background and then dark clothing, and then we're talking about dead people, just a little unsure of where we were going there. And again, the audience is important, like Kenneth mentioned. Her close out, discomfort is the price we pay for admission to a meaningful life. That was impactful. But at the end, when she closed out, we were still waiting for something else. We weren't quite sure what the message was or what we were supposed to gain from this talk. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I would love to point out one thing that just happened in the 3 different people who shared. while there was a lot of similarities, there were also 3 distinct perspectives on the speech. And you know what? There is an element to evaluation that will always have a level of subjectivity in it. Each of us is an audience member when we are listening to a speech. So as we are giving our evaluation, it's from our own perspective. And that's great. It's fine. It's beautiful. It's that diversity of thought that will continue overall to make us all improve, because I might give the same speech with 2 different evaluators and get 2 different perspectives. And that is a strength. I want you to keep that in mind when you consider, as you improve as evaluators, if you consider competing in evaluation contests, that everybody's evaluation is going to be different. And that's okay. Be the best that you are, have whatever you have to offer, and understand that there's not just one right way to do it. You just sharpen your tools and sharpen your skills so that you are delivering the most effective and the strongest evaluations that you possibly can. Now, we could take another hour and actually dive into evaluating that 2-minute segment. I do want to let you know that it's a snippet of a longer talk. So I love the snippet because it provided enough of a sample for us to practice. But some of the things that we saw about maybe wanting a fuller ending or more complete journey, as far as the content goes, were impacted because it was a snippet. Thank you so much for your participation in that activity. I would like to start wrapping up with just a couple points. So we talked about the A and the R in our strong arms. We talked about the 1-2 punch. Find the thing that's strong and make sure to focus on the strength, and then give at least 2, probably only 2 opportunities to improve, because again, evaluations are just 2 to 3 minutes. But as I've said a few times, your evaluation is a performance. Therefore, your manner as an evaluator also matters. There's a few different ways to approach how you consider presenting your own manner, but consider this. Manner, it's the way that not only the way you present your material, but also how you are presenting yourself as you share. With evaluations in particular, we look for evaluations to be delivered in a sympathetic, sensitive, and motivational manner. Your technique as an evaluator, it needs to be sensitive to the feelings and the needs of the speaker, yet it should definitely inspire, and it should encourage the speaker as well as the entire audience in their future endeavors. One of the things notice what I just did, even in sharing that. I was explaining that your evaluation should be sympathetic. It should be sensitive, and it should be motivational. Slight bits of vocal variety, slight bits of changing my body posture. I'm still giving a presentation when I'm evaluating. So everything that you know and that you practice in speeches does come into play during your evaluation, and your presentation needs to also include your manner. If you know me, I'm a pretty high energy person, yet I'm also real kind of chill at the same time. The way that I try to make sure that I'm showing up when I'm sharing information is bringing the energy and also being relaxed so that you're getting an authentic presentation of Jerome as well as the information that I'm sharing. So make sure that you are showing up as you're giving your evaluations. Finally, don't forget the summary. Now, summary can mean a few different things. Typically, a very effective way to end your evaluation is recapping what your main points are, similar to how we recap in a speech. That concludes our strong arms. Now, we've talked about the importance of evaluation. We've talked about the anatomy of a strong evaluation. So it's got the strong arms with a 1-2 punch. And we've dug into practicing how to analyze and how to give those recommendations. What questions can I answer about delivering award-winning evaluations? No questions. I solved it all. Great. So seriously, all jokes aside, my email address is here. I know that we've spent some good time together. I want to make sure that I'm leaving enough time for some of our district leaders to share some announcements. So I will take any quick questions. Like I see your hand, Pastor Jeff. What would you have?
Thank you, Jerome. My question would be, how would you encourage new Toastmasters who are already struggling with just giving their icebreakers and their regular speeches for their pathways to embody the performance of an evaluation?
Thank you for asking. There's 2 points very quickly I want to make to respond to that. Number one, the second project in all of the levels, in all of the paths, the second project in level 1 deals with feedback and evaluation, and some of the technical sides are really good. So I think it's important that Toastmasters get through that second project in any of their levels so that they have some of the technical skills. Because once you've got the foundation, you can build a little bit more. After that, getting the foundation of what goes into a solid evaluation, then it's just about practice. The second thing that I'd like to encourage is mentoring. Now, some clubs have formal mentor programs. If you don't have a formal mentor program, just a more experienced member say, hey, new member, I want to help you for your first 3 speeches. Let's run through them. You're going to be an evaluator this time. Let's practice what evaluation looks like and how you deliver it. So rely on mentoring and make sure they get the foundation. Thank you for asking that question. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're running short on time. I would love to take more time for questions. I apologize for going a little bit longer in my presenting. With this, what I'd like to do is if you have specific questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I can send emails, I can send recaps. I do want to hand over to Tanisha so she can close our session out with some announcements and some information she has. It's been a pleasure to be a presenter tonight. Thank you very much. Tanisha, I turn over to you.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Jerome. What a fantastic training that he blessed us with this evening. So I am not going to be before you all long. I just wanted to inform you of some upcoming events. I'm also going to drop some links into the chat so that way that you have them all. But we have a lot of good stuff coming up from the program quality team. So this session was a part of a 3-part master class surrounding contests. We have our very last session that's going to take place on November 20th, Shine Your Light Session 2. That session will focus on being a contest chair as well as being a judge, both a chief judge and a voting judge. So you do not want to miss that, as well as our contest season is coming up for our clubs. You need to have your club contest by the end of January. Next, we have Winter TLI. So for all of our club officers, or even those that are aspiring to be a club officer, you'll want to sign up for our session on Saturday, December 16th. We have a lot of great speakers. I'm really excited to dig into the ins and outs of being a club officer. We also have a phenomenal motivational event. We have our District 44 Speakers Bureau Motivational Summit that's taking place on January 27th. It's starting at 8:30 a.m. And again, all of those links are inside of the chat for you. Last but not least, as I mentioned, the end of the club contest season is January 31st. Jerome just gave you some great tips and tricks on how to produce an effective evaluation. And guess what? Evaluation is one of the contests that we'll be doing this year. We'll be hosting both the evaluation as well as the international speech contest. What is a better place for you to take everything that you learned this evening and to put it into practice? The only way that we get better at speaking or doing is by doing. So take this opportunity to jump in headfirst into the evaluation speech contest. Speaking of big things and jumping in head first, we have registration open for our biggest event of the year. It is our annual conference, Woo, yes, that deserves some hand claps and waves. The name and theme of our conference are Reignite Your Passion. We are trying to set you on fire in this coming April. We have some fantastic workshops and keynote speakers. So if you are interested, which I hope that you are, because I cannot even explain to you how fantastic it is to experience the conference in person, please register today. We have our early bird tickets right now, so you want to get it while they're hot. And we have that QR code as well as the link on the screen that you can leverage. I've also dropped that in the chat as well. The last thing that I'm going to ask you to do is, you didn't think you were going to get out of giving feedback, did you, at an effective evaluation session? No, we want to make sure we let Jerome know how he did. We want to talk about the things that you thought went really well. For example, what was your biggest takeaway from the session? As well as, could something have been improved? Was there a piece of the training that you were missing? Again, using on-the-spot use and application of the things that you learn is taking place this evening by you providing that feedback to Jerome. We also have the QR code that's listed inside of the chat for you to use if you are unable to scan that QR code. I'm going to leave that up here while I dismiss you all, but I want to thank you all so very much for using your time to come invest in yourself. I feel like I say that every time at the end of every event, but it's a truly important thing. You all know the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And today you all took the time to come and get filled, and we're so thankful for you. Thank you all so much. I hope that you have a fantastic evening, and please, please, please do not forget to provide some amazing feedback to Jerome. Have a great evening, everyone.